To get started, we're just going to click the little blue button right there. You've got two options. We can do this method, which is fully manual, but I highly recommend that we stick right here to the XML path, which is the most common one. We assume that you're using a reporting software that can export an XML document. We also assume that you're using some method to get all of your comps into your grid and reconcile the features of those comparables as well as the subject property features. There's a range of tools in the market that will help you do that, but what Toolkit does specifically really well is help you get to your adjustments and support those adjustments on almost any property in the entire country. So we assume that you're going to be able to get to that XML, and when you go to export, really the main thing we're looking to try to get is the sales comparison grid, and that means you don't have to complete the appraisal to do this work. But when you do go to export your XML, you're probably going to get some warnings like it's not signed, it's not complete. Just move through those alerts and just go ahead and export the XML. Just make sure that your sales comparison approach is actually complete and you're happy with the features of your comparables and your subject property before starting this work. I'm going to go grab an XML myself, right here, Bradford Trace. Alright, so it's already brought in the address, property type, and the effective date right there. You just want to make sure that this is actually the effective date of your appraisal. It's always a good idea to double check that. It's a really important date in the appraisal process. If you do have an internal order number, you can put that right there and it will show up in the table out here. So if that's going to help you organize your files better, then definitely take advantage of that. Click Create Order. Now it's going to do a whole bunch of number crunching, and really this is what we did. This is the big change that we made to Toolkit. This is all about speed and ease of use. So you're going to see that compared to the legacy version, we're going to hit one screen. We're going to pretty much do everything on this one screen, and it's going to go a whole lot faster. So you can see that we've already got a whole bunch of numbers. Where did all these numbers come from, right? Well, we've got the cost data already on our servers. We've mapped to Craftsman, and with that data, we're able to use image recognition technology, make some assumptions about quality and condition to go ahead and kick things off to a starting point with our improvement extraction and therefore our site value extraction and site value. So there's a lot of assumptions built in here to get to the starting point, but you have complete control from here. This is all about just kind of helping you get to the finish line as fast as possible and make this as simple as possible for you. Before we get into this though, let's just complete our tour of everything that you see on the screen here. Up here to the upper right, you can see an I. This is the page guide. This is more instructions. How does all this stuff work, right? And it will walk you through it step by step. We have a map. And here's the subject property on Bradford Trace. And if I click here, there's comp 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they're all in the same neighborhood. This big neighborhood right here. I forgot the name of the neighborhood, but this is all one big neighborhood. And then right here we have site analysis. Something that's new to the tool is we go into your MLS and we find the most proximate vacant land sales available over the last 12 months. And so while these are not very close to the subject property, which is expected here in Allen because pretty much everything's built out, but these are some of the most proximate vacant land sales available to kind of give you somewhat of an idea of what land is selling for across the area. And you can see, you know, we have a range from 85 to 292, and right out of the gate, our site values aren't too far off from that. Of course, you have to do a little bit of investigating to see what's going on with these two, or actually all three of these. But in terms of the, you know, Allen, Plano, Richardson, those site values are pretty high. All right, alerts. This is also somewhat of a new feature. You know, these are things that you're going to want to check. When we're talking about a neighborhood like this particular one where all the sites are pretty similar to one another, they all have similar influences, we would expect similar site to value ratios. And there's going to be a range, but we shouldn't see something like a 20% site to value ratio and an 80% site to value ratio. So those are the kinds of things that this is going to pick up on. Not to say that that's not an impossible situation, but there should be a reason for it that you are really well aware of. All right, the red house right here is the subject property, and we have the MLS data for that property. If I scroll down to the bottom here, it's coming in from Netris, and it was pinged last today at 1:30 p.m. CST. Here are the photos. Let's see, this is like a 20-something-year-old home, something like that. Public record, we do have this for the entire country. Yeah, so it was built 21 years ago. And then we have Street View. So let's close that. Now you'll see that if I click in the subject column, this disappears. If I click here, there's comp 1, 2, 3, 4. Same stuff. MLS data, photos, public data, and Street View. So we have all this data over here to the right. This is all very contextual. It's all there to help you get to the right answers as quickly as possible. We also have the quality guide. So we are integrated with Craftsman, which I would encourage you to go do some research on that cost data source. It's a really good one. Now, they do have a quality scale from 1 to 6, very similar to the UAD. We have 0.1 increments as well. Now, they did not build their quality scale to perfectly match the UAD standard. So it's not a perfect one-to-one match, but it does have a 6-step scale, with 1 being the best, 6 being the lowest quality. But you'll have to understand the nuances between the two and how they describe each one of those quality levels. But it is very close, and you can certainly kind of draw some equivalencies there as you use it. All right, so let's go over here to the upper left. You're going to see that we have 2 tools. Depreciated cost and paired sales. These are 2 tried and true methods in real estate appraising, and they work really, really well together. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with depreciated cost, including get your adjustments on pretty much any property in the country. But there's some things that depreciated cost cannot do. So for example, if you're trying to figure out what that big pond is worth on the land, or what that traffic view, what that impact is, paired sales is really going to be the best tool you've got at your disposal. You're going to need to find 2 sales, similar improvements, similar sites, one with the influence, one without, and that's going to allow you to measure that market impact of whatever you're trying to measure. And the paired sales engine here is going to help you do that. But let's stick with depreciated costs for right now. Now, one step down, we've got some additional tabs here. Analysis, and then this is what we're working towards. We're going to work towards these adjustments. Commentary, this is all the support for your adjustments. Cost approach, and then export. This is what we're going to do. We're going to either export it to just raw PDFs, or we're going to export it to Total, Appraisal Pro, or ClickForms. And in those cases, it's going to actually just put the adjustments into your grid and put all the documents into your work files. Let's go back to analysis. Now, with showing you that, you're going to probably notice that we very intentionally kept all the work on one page. It's the page that you go to as soon as you start the order. So everything you're going to do with depreciated cost happens in this one screen. And we're going to work through this order here together. All right, so you're going to see down here at the bottom these little stars. So this represents image recognition technology. It's there to help provide some context in the overall analysis. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to do before you start messing with these is you want to make sure all the improvements are mapped to each one of the properties. And the way you do that is through this edit button. And this is where you have the ability to edit anything that you want about the property and deviate away from what you have in your appraisal, or just provide the extra detail that we need to do the cost mapping. So if I scroll down, you can see we have the garage. Now, if the public record has the size of the garage, it's going to go ahead and pull it in for you. If you have a different measurement from your sketch, go ahead and replace that now. You can just go ahead and change this to 460. And you can also add stuff. So if you wanted to add an ADU, you can add the size of it, the quality, full bath, half bath, delete. This is what you put into your own grid. So this is just coming in from your appraisal. You have a little notes section right there. Of course, have all of your data right here to do your research with. Try to figure out all this stuff. And then we can go to Comp 1, Comp 2, Comp 3, Comp 4. And in my case here in North Texas, our MLS does sometimes have the pool size. So where it's, where the appraisal indicated that it had a pool, it's going to go ahead and pull it in for me. But you definitely want to double check this stuff to make sure it did it and it did it correctly. In this case, I agree with 284 square feet and better, the better rating here, right here in the middle. I'll click done. Now that that's finished, let's go ahead and move over here to date of sale adjustments. So there's a few different options here. We can click none. I really kind of don't recommend that one. But we've got Zillow. If we go down here to custom monthly, if you think that it's 1% a month, then it's going to apply a 1% a month adjustment. Where you get that number is completely up to you. My preference is actually this one. And you can do 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. But let's do 12. And in my MLS, we have something called trends, where I can do a lot of different filters. I can do a 3 or 6 month rolling average, stuff like that. And there's going to be a chart with a bunch of numbers on it, a number for each month, average or median. And I can go in here and just start typing those numbers in and transferring it into Toolkit. Maybe it goes back down. You can see we're basically building the chart in real time. And then it's just going to go ahead and apply that time adjustment here. So it's showing that the market really went down a whole lot between this month and the effective date of the appraisal. 295, negative 335. But these are all fake numbers. So I'm going to go back here to Zillow and then apply those adjustments. And then I'm going to put in a 99% list to sell price ratio, which is based on your own research. And I'll click Save. So now we have our time adjustments in the grid. So what we're doing here in depreciated cost, and let's talk a little bit about framework here, is we're taking the sales price right there. In this case, Comp 1 sold for $472,000. And we're taking each one of the dollars and we're putting them in one of two buckets. One bucket is this improvements bucket. And the other bucket is the site bucket. We've only got two buckets. And we've only got $472,000. So the land is worth something, and if the land is worth X, then the improvements are worth $472,000 minus X. So our job to get to the site value is simply to figure out what these improvements are and depreciate them. So to do that, we need to know the quality of the improvements, and we need to know the effective age. Now, image recognition technology can certainly help us quite a bit, and this is something that a lot of work is being done in the industry on. But really, it comes down to you putting your own eyeballs on the properties yourself and making sure it makes sense. Now, these properties in particular are all 20-something years old, early 20s to mid 20s, and they've all had various degrees of updating. So I'm setting them all at 15. I kind of agree with the image recognition technology here, but they're all different quality levels. Let's kind of explore that a little bit. So let's take a look at Comp 1. Here's Comp 1's kitchen. Pretty basic. Let's go here and look at Comp 3's kitchen. Higher quality. Now we're kind of into better quality wood, better quality backsplash, countertops, tiling. It's just It's just a little bit better. Let's go back here and take a look at this one. All right, and then let's go back and look at this one. It's just better. So, you know, and you can see right here the image recognition technology is picking up on this. So it's giving, you know, comp 1 a 3.8. So let's just say we go with that. And it's giving this one a little bit lower quality, but see, I disagree with that. So I'm going to actually end up kind of doing my own thing here. I'm going to end up going with a 3.8, 4. This is where that image recognition technology needs more testing, but also know, you know, even with all that testing, it's a guide. It's a tool for you to use, but it requires you to do your own investigation and research into it. Okay, so this is roughly what I ended up coming up with, and we might make a few other adjustments here in a second, but ultimately what I'm trying to get to is I want the numbers to somewhat align with vacant land sales in the area, but I also want them to align here. So this is my site size graph, so site to value ratio. Because I don't have any real influences here, negative or positive, there's nothing really special about any one of these lots. So theoretically, the smallest lot should be worth the least, and the largest lot should be worth the most. And you can see that we have the subject popping out right there, and we're somewhere between these two. So I'm going to just adjust this to 165, and there you go. So we have a nice little upwards trend, the smallest site to the largest site, and it's going up as expected. As the sites get larger, my site value per square foot goes down, which is also expected. And then you can see down here we have an assessor's land to value ratio, which typically isn't something you would just go with, but it's in the ballpark. We're kind of in, we're somewhat similar to where it's at. You know, you wouldn't want to be, you know, depending on what's your knowledge of your tax assessor and how accurate they are, I wouldn't recommend saying doubling that. I would put, you know, red flags should be going off if you're that far off from what the tax assessor says, depending on your location. But there's a lot of things here that kind of act as a framework to try to make sure that all these numbers make sense relative to one another. And that's the thing that Toolkit does better than anything else. It's the relativity between the comps that's so important, that everything makes sense against one another. And so once we get to a point where all these site values make sense relative to one another, everything else kind of falls into place. Because if we believe that the subject, that the comp 1 site value is 158, then the improvements up here have to be 313. It's just subtraction. And so then the difference between improvements between the subject and comp 1 are just 353 minus 313. The site value is 165 minus 158. Now let's pretend that this value came in way lower. So let's do something like this. And it's at 2.9, so therefore we increase the value of the improvements, it bumped this down to 75. And you're sitting there going, well, this looks really, really weird. Why is this the case? Well, it could be because it's being influenced by something adverse in the area. So you can add a functional obsolescence adjustment here. And basically what you're saying is, you know, the site is worth something comparable to the comps, but it's being influenced by this functional obsolescence adjustment. So if without the influence it was worth something like 140, so then whatever that influence is, it's hitting it by about $65,000. Do you see what I just did there? So if I delete that, it goes to 75. If I add it back, now what's really kind of cool is if you go and do the research through paired sales analysis to figure out that railroad track or industrial facility through paired sales analysis is impacting properties by $65,000, and that data aligns with this impact that you're seeing here. That's the ideal case. That's the best support you could potentially ever have. So let's go ahead and go back to about right there. This is arguably the better of the properties right there. I think all this makes really good sense. Once you get to this point, you're kind of done. So if I click adjustments, we're going to go right here. Now I'm going to turn off my rounding and thresholds. So these are just the raw numbers now. If I click a number like this, it's going to show you where the number came from. It's going to show you the math. So site extraction adjustments is going to explain it right there. Obviously we're not making an adjustment to the subject site value, but right here we are. So we have a market adjustment minus depreciated cost equals the site value. And then the adjustment is simply just 165 minus 159. You could explore all these numbers yourself, but these are very specific numbers. I highly recommend you use our functions up here for rounding, which you can do to the nearest, all kinds of stuff. So let's do it to the nearest 1,000, but we can also do, let's see here, let's do condition to the nearest 5,000. And then we have thresholds here. You can set custom thresholds. Like you can say, look, I don't want to make any adjustments under $1,000 or $2,000. Let's just leave those adjustments out of the grid. I'll save and close, rounding, and we'll turn on the thresholds. Now some stuff disappeared, some stuff got, rounded, but you can see our adjusted sales prices are really similar to one another still, 518 to 520. And they look really good too. Our net and grosses are also really, really low, except for comp 4, but that's because it's got a pool and it's a much, it's got a higher quality than the subject property. If we came in at 518, this property sold for 510, so everything came out really nice and close in that way as well. And from there, we can go to the commentary, check that out, read more about it. Cost approach, all nice and complete. Our source, estimated remaining economic life, all that stuff. Export, total, Fannie Mae 1004, export. And then you'll open this up with that file open over in your form filler, and then all the adjustments go in, all the documentation goes to your work file. You also get your cost approach filled out.